the same time, it's going to be an ongoing struggle, because you need to keep your city safe and clean, and at the same time you need to protect the rights, the legitimate rights of homeless folks, and treat them like people, and try to get the services they need. Some of these people are working folks too, that just don't happen to be able to have enough money for a place to live, or a roof over their head. So it's an ongoing struggle. I think it's a great idea. To me, it's an extension of the concept of community policing, where police are out of their cars, out of their offices, connecting to the community. And this is just yet one more way that the community can connect to their police services, and they're not seen as some other that's in a car, and they're connecting to the community in a positive way. But I think the trying to morph Fortuna into being a small residential community into the true retail center of the county is probably a short-sighted move.
As part of our series of in-depth interviews with candidates for Humboldt County Supervisor, the Editorial Board of the Humboldt Sentinel sat down with candidate Clif Clendenen from the 2nd District here at Has Beans Cafe just a few days ago. And land use is obviously a hot topic, both in central and southern Humboldt County. What's your vision for where the general plan should go, and what modes of development should be implemented here in Humboldt County?
I think in Humboldt County we want to see somewhere in the range of Plan A and Plan B. That'll be adjusted geographically, depending on the outreach meetings and what people have decided they want to see in different areas. The county has tried to incorporate as much of all the local people's visions in the different regions of the county. But I think we want to largely try to keep our resource lands, our timber lands and ag lands working, and try to concentrate development in and around the cities where we have infrastructure. That'll also make it easier to have the towns be transportation hubs, and public transportation is going to be a bigger issue as fuel prices get greater, and as we have a lot more seniors. It's a population that's going to impact our county. It's the only growing group, so we need to kind of think ahead and figure out what's going to accommodate them. And in my mind, it turns out that what accommodates seniors is also really going to be useful for the population at large. Having better public transportation and keeping our hospitals well and sound.
You mentioned public transportation. The bus has seen dramatic increase of use this year with the Jack Pass through Humboldt State University, College of the Redwoods moving in a similar direction. But folks south of the College of the Redwoods, which is basically your district, the 2nd District, how do you increase service to places like Fortuna, Riodale, and how do you bring service to places like Garberville, Ferndale that really don't see any bus service at all?
Well, I was really enthused to see how well the Jack Pass worked and the increased usage. And I think I just see the transit system in Humboldt County as something that will be built upon. There's the fare box recovery, which is required by the funders, and you know we can look for some innovative sources of funding and try to work some of the different transportation systems together. Fortuna has a transportation system, Garberville has the Quail, Humboldt Transit. I think if we can get these to coordinate as well as possible, that'll be the key. And I think as fuel prices go up, there'll be a convergence of interests here, and I think that there will be more ridership. And I think we need to keep working it as a government, but then private folks are going to use this at an increased rate, and I just see it as building.
And never far from the topic of both environmental health and public safety is the issue of homelessness. There have been some recent raids or sweeps, as some in the county have called them, down in the southern Humboldt area. Folks getting arrested for pretty petty, nonviolent sort of offenses. What do you think is really the best approach towards satisfying the needs of the business community, not to be loitered upon, versus the rights of the homeless folk and their needs as far as affordable housing and getting off the street?
This is going to be an ongoing struggle. I know there was a volunteer group that down in Redway last winter, that successfully housed some homeless folks, and it's actually to the benefit of the community. We want to make sure that the rivers are clean and safe and it's not illegal dumping. I know that's happened in Redway Garberville area, and it's also happening north of Fortuna. But at the same time, it's going to be an ongoing struggle because you need to keep your city safe and clean, and at the same time you need to protect the rights, the legitimate rights of homeless folks, and treat them like people and try to get the services they need. Some of these people are working folks too that just don't happen to be able to have enough money for a place to live or a roof over their head. So it's an ongoing struggle, but I think the main thing we need to think of these are residents of our community, and we need to treat them as people, and but at the same time make sure that they're not impinging on the rights of others. Mm-hmm. So it's a balance. I think good community discussions and good notification and trying to make people realize that make all people realize that it has to work for both sides on an issue like this. And I think it's actually a benefit sometimes to have, like the community volunteer group that was housing some homeless this winter in Redway. Mm-hmm. That was actually increased safety for some of the residents because the homeless folks weren't starting fires out in the brush to keep warm, and so I think it can be seen as a win-win.
What's your stance on independent police accountability measures? Do you think they're necessary, and if so, what sort of vision do you have for how you'd like to see that implemented?
I think it's a great idea. To me, it's an extension of the concept of community policing, where police are out of their cars, out of their offices, connecting to the community. And this is just yet one more way that the community can connect to their police services, and they're not seen as some other that's in a car, and they're connecting to the community in a positive way. And I think it provides a good feedback loop for if someone's concerned about the way law enforcement is being carried out. There's a panel to deal with that, and I think it's a great connection. The concern seems to be more from the people I've talked to is grow houses in neighborhoods and kind of making sure that the Compassionate Use Act, Prop 215, achieves its end without being a giant loophole where basically a lot of marijuana can be produced and consumed outside of the confines of 215. But I'd have to look in more to what Mendocino's done. I'm aware of the changes in the quantities, but I think there's going to need to be a good community discussion to preserve the intent of 215 without having it be abused.
And how do you balance that with the issue of code enforcement? Obviously, you have a series of diesel spills that have become a hot topic down there in southern Humboldt. Where do you see the role for code enforcement in protecting environmental health, and how do you balance that with privacy rights, property rights, and so forth?
I think it's good that the Board of Supervisors has a code enforcement oversight panel. I think that's a great step, and I think it's also a good step to separate the criminal aspects of code enforcement, or the legitimate civil aspects of code enforcement from branching off into criminal prosecution. There were two different things, and I think they were confused. I know that a group up in Salmon Creek and others are really interested in making sure that their watersheds are protected, and ironically, after this group had formed up in Salmon Creek that are looking into the impacts of diesel in the environment, there was the 1,000-gallon spill that, of course, was in the papers a week or so ago. And I think a lot of people feel like marijuana culture has been common in southern Humboldt and other areas of the county and the state and the nation for years, and it's not going away. But the diesel grows, the environmental impact of that, both in the carbon usage and the effect on the watersheds, needs to get reined in. So I think it's good that we're looking at that, and that's going to be an ongoing community discussion that we need to have.
One more issue, definitely of interest. The Fortuna and the direction Fortuna is going. Is it going to be the next Eureka? Is there room for big box development there? And if so, is that the sort of development the people there really need? You're a Fortuna resident. What's your feelings on that?
My best sense of the way we should develop in Fortuna is a true mixed use. Have some more residential, more, especially have some manufacturing and industrial land available for those opportunities for increased economic diversity and living wage jobs that go with that. And we're going to need more office space, and we definitely need some more retail. But I think the trying to morph Fortuna into being a small residential community into the true retail center of the county is probably a short-sighted move for several reasons. I think it would adversely alter the friendly Fortuna feel, the small town feel that we have. And I think the impacts on traffic, South Broadway at several times now during the day is almost unworkable. And I feel that if we created a center down in Fortuna where the regional shopping would all be happening down in Fortuna, we would be pulling from Arcata, McKinleyville, Eureka. In fact, Fred Cass, the developer who has been planning the shopping center there on the old Palco Mill site, has said that he's basically going to use the entire county as his draw area for this shopping center. So I think when you look at fuel prices and the traffic impacts and the effects on Fortuna, I don't think that would be our best move. And also, internet shopping and catalog shopping is really increasing. And I think
the fact that he wants to use Fortuna taxpayer dollars to help fund the project.
Well, yeah, there's another factor too. And so I think, but it's not so much being against that as for some of the better things I think we could do is having development in Fortuna that would really enhance the feel that we have in Fortuna and increase some employment opportunities by having some manufacturing and industrial land set aside and available for companies that would want to relocate there.
What do you think the best thing that can happen to that?
Well, I
Do you think the plan, the Mendocino Redwood plan, is that something that you're behind?
I would love to see that occur. It does several things. It would keep the habitat conservation plan intact and working. It would keep the timberlands, the 200,000 acres of timberlands in single ownership, and they'd be working with a certification that would ensure that it was sustainable, and the mill would be operating and available for as a home for the logs from other small landowners and ranch landowners. So, and I think in the short term there would be a cut in employment, but in the long term I think that would be a very healthy model.
What do you see happening with Rio Del? Do you have a?
I think Rio Del's on a roll. I think their city manager and city council are they've got their water system fixed. They're working on their sewer system now, and they've done the beautification there on Wildwood Avenue, and I think it's been very affordable compared to other communities, and have great weather. It's another little beautiful bend of the river with the Scotia Bluffs there.
It is nice there, isn't it? What's like your main reason for running?
I got enthused for a long time. I've been interested in addition to being an apple farmer. I've worked as a carpenter and designed some parts of buildings and some porches, and read books about streetscapes, and I've always been interested in how communities feel and look. And in the last year or so, I engaged in Fortuna's general plan update process, and just as a citizen was commenting on some of the things that they were thinking about doing there and engaging in the roundtable discussions. And it seemed like a great opportunity to kind of go from there to thinking about the county as a whole and how we could develop and do it sustainably and positively and make it a place where we could economically thrive and yet be a great place to live. we've had pasture-fed cattle, and it wasn't like something we needed to invent. It was just there,
But
and I think that
unpasteurized milk can still not come out of Humboldt County. Maybe Charles can more
That's my understanding.
correct. It's illegal to sell unpasteurized milk. It's illegal for you probably to sell unpasteurized.
we
apple
could.
juice, correct?
Well, the regulations changed for apple juice in the wake of the Odwalla incident, and so we can sell unpasteurized apple juice, which we still do seasonally at our location in Fortuna. But it
You
cannot,
can't sell commercially, correct?
It's sold commercially, but just at our location. It can't be wholesale to other locations. And I know there's a discussion of unpasteurized milk as well, and I think as long as something like that is, I know there's a market for it, as long as it's labeled appropriately. I believe it happens in Mendocino County, and I think that could be a market as long as it's clearly identified, so the consumers that get it, and there's not a crossover.
Does that hurt your business?
Yeah, it downsized our apple cider business a little bit, but we're growing more apples, and so we can still wholesale whole market apples, and so we've been doing that successfully.
Do you think there's a future for the railroad in Humboldt County? And if so, is it in cooperation with the regional authority that's been sort of running things for the last 10 years, not making a whole lot of progress? Or do you think the rails that are on the ground here in Humboldt County should be used by a more county-specific authority for local transportation or shipment use?
Well, I think railroad's great, just in a general way. The carbon footprint of moving goods by rail is great. And for anybody that's ever taken the passenger train out of here, which I remember doing as a kid, it's just a wonderful way to travel through the Eel River Canyon. But and so the challenges, though, of having that railroad through that canyon of bentonite clay, where there's slip outs, and in many places there's not even a rail bed anymore. I think you keep adding zeros to what that's going to cost to do that, and so I think that's probably unfeasible at this point to take public money and fix that so that a private company could then operate it or haul freight through there. I think that's it's just too much public tax money to do that, and the environmental standards to rebuild that through that unstable geology would be really challenging. But that being said, I think it's really important to keep all this in single ownership, single public ownership for some foreseeable use. And I think locally, I think the rail banking idea is great to use these local sections as part of the Humboldt Bay Trail system. I think would be a great step. As soon as there's a viable freight haul, those could be converted back to that if there really is a demand to use that as a rail. But I think in the short term here, I think a trail system would be our best shot, and it would make a great community asset, a great destination for adventure tourism, that type of thing.
Is it a challenge just getting all the way across the 2nd District over the last few months? It's just so many hundreds of square miles, so many remote locations.
Oh, it's huge, and I certainly haven't been everywhere, but I've been Alder Point Road up into Trinity County and Kenton Palm, and several times in the Redway Garberville area, and out to Shelburne Cove a couple times. Certainly a lot around Fortuna and Hydesville and Riddell. Talked to a lot of people, and there's a lot of variety and diversity of opinions out there. But it's been interesting, and I feel like I'm an accessible person to all those groups.
Where do you stand out, you think, from your opponents?
I think in having a small business background, being running a small family farm, you're used to change, you're used to balancing a budget, making payroll, and so I think my small business background and community interest in helping set up the Apple Harvest Festival that we have in Fortuna, partnered with the city, and we're in our 23rd year of putting that on. And I worked with a group to help found the, in fact I was the founding president of the Fortuna Concert Series, and did that for about 7 years. So I think being connected to the community, and my business is kind of a destination for a lot of people, well, and really in Humboldt County as a whole. And so I feel like I've stayed connected to a wide variety of people, and I think between my connections to the community and business background and enthusiasm for being able to see us economically thrive, yet at the same time take care of the place and look to restore maybe some of the areas, our rivers particularly. I think that makes me stand out as someone who's got the right ideas and ready to get it done.
Do you have any like sort of solutions towards intermingling the northern half of your district in with the southern half of your district, and to alleviate the necessity of pot growing as the economic sort of fuel?
Well, I think looking for like, you know, in the, you mentioned the development of Fortuna. I think having some kind of looking ahead for some, make sure there's some land available, and a trained workforce to diversify the economy, and look for being able to have some industrial and manufacturing land available, and really work to court businesses that would be a good fit. You know, would provide some alternatives, so that, yeah, it wouldn't be like, okay, I'm going to work at work retail, or I'm going to work in the drug industry. I mean, I think we definitely want to have some more here.
Now, without a rail and without the access to the bay, it puts Rio Dell and pretty much any of the more inland little towns at a sort of a economic sort of disadvantage, correct? What can you think of that would entice a business to come to open up there and to prosper?
Yeah, well, the businesses are going to prosper are going to have to work with the basically they have Highway 101 as their link, and having Confusion Hill repaired, and I think the realignment through Richardson's Grove that allows the STAA trucks available. I think that'll release the bottleneck on both getting goods out and getting goods in.
Do you see Headwaters funds available for prospective commercial building?
Yes,
possibly.
Sure, that and the McLean Foundation Fund as well. Those funds were primarily set up, in the 2nd District, and there haven't been a lot of application in those. So I think government having kind of working with the private sector, partnering with them to, see that there's land available, look at some of the trends like they've done with their targets of opportunity, see where there's areas, for potential growth in the county, and then try to work to see that those ideas get funded, and I think it's always the private sector that's going to create the job. The government's not going to just plunk a job in somewhere, but I think they can.
But the government can certainly lend a helping hand.
Sure, be ready to assist and have a business-friendly attitude.
Now, in terms of increased transit service, bettering the road system, and so on, how would you pay for it? There's been some criticism of the board as it's constituted in terms of fiscal conservatism or lack thereof. The former Supervisor Rodoni was a swing vote on the $300,000 golden parachute to the former county council, Tanny Fowler. Where would have you fallen on that issue in particular, and in general on who gets to bear the burden of maintaining and increasing these services?
Well, on that particular vote to the former county council, it's a personnel matter. It's in confidential. It's in closed session. I couldn't couldn't comment on, whether that was justified or not. I'm aware that it wasn't a unanimous vote. I feel like as a small business person, I've always worked in a fiscally conservative manner. The job of a small farm business demands that, and I think the budget at the county is quite a different animal. I think I would carry forward those same attitudes of if you don't have it, you can't spend it, and try to think long term, so you're not lurching from year to year. Like don't spend a lot just some years just because you have it. Try to make sure that it's targeted to a need and a service, and be looking ahead so you're not caught short when the economic times get tougher.
Do you have the same sort of outlook towards the To Be Ranch?
The To Be Ranch would be really nice if parties had come together, the county and Bob McKee had come together at an earlier stage, and it hadn't gotten to that point. Many of those votes, again, were closed session, but those were typically 5-0 votes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so it's regrettable that so much money needed to be spent on both sides to solve that. It looks like at least they're partially gotten through that.
As far as a general rule for all the candidates in the future, in terms of campaign contributions and so on?
I think it is a lot of money that gets spent, but the system requires that you spend a fair amount of money to try to get your message out. I think in the 2nd District, I think our campaign has actually raised the least money, but we have an incredible volunteer effort which is compensated for that. And I think we have, I think my candidacy is really viable because it's incorporated a good group of Southern Humboldt folks with a fairly new to the process group in Northern Humboldt, Fortuna area. And so I think that's been the strength of my campaign, has been a really strong volunteer effort. Great campaign manager in Bill Thornton.
Obviously, it's a strange runoff situation in your district in particular, but in general, there's been criticisms of the runoff system as perhaps not being most reflective as possible of the will of the voters. Would you be interested in a county charter process that would move towards an election reform such as instant runoff voting, also known as ranked choice voting, which they use for county supervisor down in San Francisco?
I've paid a little bit of attention to that, but I don't know enough to know whether that would work in Humboldt County. Obviously, in the 2nd District, we have a very unusual situation with the death of Roger Radoni but that campaign continuing, and the way election law bears on that. This is really unusual for all of us, but. I think the general comment I would make is that any election that and any reform that more accurately reflects the will of the voters is always positive.
Humboldt County voters are reminded to cast their ballots on or before Tuesday, June 3rd. For all of us here at the Humboldt Sentinel, this is Charles Douglas reporting from Old Town Eureka.